On this week's episode of Amari Purple Talk, more of the year in review, plus I've seen the future and it works. Amari Purple Talk starts now. Welcome to episode 19 of Amari Purple Talk, a podcast where I share my thoughts on the Prince musical singularity. I'm Richard Cole, your imagination funksoloist. I want to start by thanking everyone that has tuned in. I hope you're enjoying the show. Please leave your comments on the show where comments are displayed. YouTube listeners, please continue to like and subscribe. Feel free to also visit my website, www.amaricommunications.com. You may also click the links in the show notes to follow me on social media and submit topics or questions for use in future episodes. And with that out of the way, let's start with our first topic. And our first topic is the year in review, the beautiful ones. All right, so we are on our final segments of the year in review. And first, with this final segment, we're going to cover the release of The Beautiful Ones, the autobiography by Prince, written with Dan Piepenbring. So October 28th of this year saw the release of this long anticipated autobiography. There were questions prior to its release as to whether it would ever see the light of day, just due to Prince only being able to hand in about 50 pages of handwritten material prior to his death on April 21st of 2016. But the publishers, along with the blessings of the estate, decided to go forward with this project, and it fell to the shoulders of the co-author that Prince handpicked for this project, Dan Piepenbring. So what we got with the finished product was very great detailed introduction by Dan Piepenbring, including also after that the first 50 pages that Prince wrote himself, and the rest is supplemented by scrapbook material, song lyrics, things of that nature. Now, for those, I know a lot of people are, for Christmas holidays, are just now getting this book as a present and are probably diving into it or, halfway through it. So, warning to all current listeners, there will be spoilers discussed in this segment. Also, too, I won't go into great detail, but I did do a full spoiler review of the book. That would be covered in episode 11 of Amari Purple Talk. I have the links to the YouTube version of it. And of course, everyone else, listen on your favorite podcast platform, and then jump back in once you finish reading the book. So there is that if you want more detailed spoilers. This is going to be just kind of a basic recap of my thoughts. Like I said, I've lived with the book for a while now, since receiving it on the day of release. And I'm still, blown away by the content and heavily inspired by the content of the book. So, like I said, for all of you that are just receiving it, I envy your experience for reading this the first time. Just as the words start to unfold as you're reading them and its effect on you from that point forward. So, like I said, I've lived with it. I'm still overwhelmed, blown away, inspired by it. So to cover just a few things, my impressions of the book still 2 months later. I feel the book overall, based on the introduction, that this was intended to be Prince's mission statement for finding the definition of funk ownership, and freedom. So we've known for quite a while, and I guess most significantly with his wanting to leave Warner Brothers back in the mid 90s, and also the fight to retain ownership of his master recordings. So I think overall his worldview wasn't to stop there, but to kind of utilize that freedom once he did obtain his release from Warner Brothers Records, and then decades later, finally retaining the ownership of his master recordings. So to go beyond that, utilizing that as an inspiration for all people, also for the development of black communities, to utilize that and use that as a blueprint and inspiration for obtaining, say, your own freedom, meaning the freedom to be able to follow your path in life. And as far as ownership, anything that you create, whether it's art or whether it's your own business, to maintain as much ownership and control of it. And basically finding the definition of funk beyond, sort of transcending beyond the definition of it as a musical term, but to have something that was going to be uniquely his. In the introduction, Dan Pippenbring brings up the word magic. And Prince sort of dismissed it as, well, that's Michael Jackson's word to use. Funk is more my word, but I want to come up with a definition that matches it. And I know they've discussed in the introduction things such as alchemy and other words were thrown about, but something was missing. And I think that was Prince's quest from that point forward, was to try to find that explanation. In a previous episode, my theory was that definition is basically taking the euphoria of the feeling of obtaining your, whether it's artistic freedom or whatever freedom, or ownership, and taking that euphoria once you've attained those things. That's the funk right there. That spiritual feeling, that spiritual high that you get, that you're living your life's purpose. So that was sort of my definition of it. But the rest of the introduction, there was an article in the New York Times around September, prior to the release of the book, to where a lot of the paragraphs and the themes explored. It kind of made it a bit of a spoiler for me, actually. But still, this introduction in this book still provides me with the inspiration of finding my own freedom, my own concept of ownership, and finding my own definition of funk. But for those that did not read the New York Times article prior to reading this introduction in the book, believe me, you will be definitely moved. And this is something that I tend to kind of refer to off and on, reading that introduction, sort of an inspiration to, finish the next project or take things to the next level. We're coming up on 2020, and definitely, folks, it's going to be on. So that's the introduction. So the next segment of the book was the 50 handwritten pages by Prince that were turned in originally. And I'll say, just as you're getting into it, just as you're totally drawn in, and you're drawn in pretty much within the first couple of pages anyway. But, just like with any narrative, anyone telling you a story that are pretty good storytellers, and wow, the way he was illustrating his life from the beginning, and it cut short right around high school. And like I said, at that point, you're just getting into it, and then zip, it stops. But man, this is, we're all used to the myth. We're used to the image. We get sort of a glimpse, whether it's through certain songs or certain song lyrics. We kind of get a window into his world. And I think that was overall his preferred method of communicating his life, or dealing with whatever he was going through at the moment, or dealing with past issues, dealing with things with his parents, and so forth. So to get the openness and the honesty was something that was really, really telling. And like I said, it draws you in because it's definitely peeling back the layers. And for me, it takes me back. I was in grade school throughout the 70s, and just his narrative, just kind of that worldview, just coming off the back end of the 60s for me. And like I said, just being all through, grade school throughout the 70s, it really takes you back because he really paints a picture, and it's like telling a story. Now, I've heard other reviewers, slightly younger, and their take on it, it's like listening to their uncles or their parents, so to speak. For me, it's like, yeah, I'm there. I was there. Or some of the experience, friends that had like older brothers or stuff like that, just what they were experiencing and just kind of being around them. And then, like I said, some of the experiences growing up, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. And, even going into the 80s through high school, everything's relative. So, a lot of those experiences that he was having were similar. And it's like, it was relatable, definitely relatable. But again, also, too, that theme of freedom and ownership that was starting to come through in that narrative. His thought process, how things developed for him musically, the things that, he was being turned on to. There's one story in the book about how a girl he was dating was trying to turn him on to all this, like the main ingredient and Blue Magic and, just the ballads. And just through that experience, he learned how to master the artistry of a ballad, through that experience. Another item was, just how music becomes the soundtrack of your life, where this one girl he was into, his first kiss with that girl, and was that immediately right after went to the record store, bought Shaka Khan, Rufus and Shaka Khan's Rufusized album, and that's an album that we all have grown up with, that familiar with, has been in a lot of our homes. I just recently got it on vinyl myself. I've had the other two, the one before and the one after, that Rags to Rufus, and then Rufus featuring Shaka Khan. I've had those two on vinyl for the longest, and this was the incentive. And and Claire Fisher was the string arranger on those albums, so there's that symmetry that you notice with stuff like that. So like I said, just it's great. Like I said, if you're reading it for the first time, I envy you. For those that have read it, like I said, there's those of us that were there during that time period, during that particular generation. So whether we were slightly older or slightly younger, all those experiences we could relate to because we remember the time. We remember what was going on in those moments, whether it was just within your block, whether it was on a local scale or country scale or global. We remember things that were going on during that period, and just even the simple recollections just kind of takes you back to that time period. And like I said, for those that weren't around, that kind of came in later, like I said, it's, it gives you a glimpse as to what was really going on during that time, what we were thinking, what we were feeling and stuff. So, It's definitely a book I recommend. Also, too, I mean, based on the fact that it was cut so short and that they had to pad the material. Now, I did find the padded material, like starting with the chapter dealing with the For You album period. To me, that was just as interesting. You don't get the benefit of Prince's full narrative since he wasn't able to get that far in the writing process. But I felt like that particular portion that of the scrapbook portion of the book translated better than the final half of the book, because that I felt was just kind of patchwork and thrown together. And with that being said, I felt that there were a lot of missed opportunities with that. I personally feel like it's great that the book is out and it's out as a standalone release, and it holds its own as a standalone release. But I feel that this could have been an opportunity, because here's the thing. I mean, yes, Prince wanted to release a book, and even with that, had he realized this to its completion, I don't think this would have been an orthodox release. I think there would have been something done to where he would have made this his own, or he would have put his own special spin on the marketing. Maybe include a CD with it. Who knows? Or maybe I don't know, but I'm about to get into that in just a moment. But like I said, I feel that it does hold its own as a standalone release, but I do feel that there are missed opportunities in regards to this book. One, I think this should have been a total multimedia interactive experience, meaning that there should have been there was, and I think this was just for Record Store Day, there was a special 45 of I Feel For You that was released with the actually the A side was the acoustic version, and then the B side was a remastered studio version from the second album. I feel that was a pretty good idea, but I would have gone a step further with it. To me, because the piano and microphone tour was so, I guess what's the word, revelatory, because you were kind of getting glimpses of what was to be in the book. So with that particular tour, a lot of the shows from beginning to end, there were a lot of those sort of revealing anecdotes and those personal anecdotes that were revealed on the tour that would have made a lovely companion to this book. And I feel, again, had he realized this to completion, I think the piano microphone tour was sort of the warm-up for that, or it would have coincided with the release at some point, especially probably by the time of the tour's end with that. But that being said, maybe a sort of 2-disc, or I know we kind of throw the word box set around a lot on this show, but something like one of the best, most revealing recordings from maybe the Paisley Park performances, some of the ones from Australia, or maybe not a full box set, but maybe taking elements from just those two performances as a companion to the book, I think would have been a good idea. Also, I would have loved to have seen a chapter of Prince's explanation of him telling his origins of the songs, which there are notes that do exist. There were notes that were given to Alan Leeds when he was doing the liner notes to the hits and the B-sides. And some of those notes did end up on his Prince's Love for One Another website when that was in existence. That would have been a really great addition to this book, especially towards the end. Like I said, to me, the end is sort of a patchwork kind of a thing. I did love the first draft, or his draft of Purple Rain, his treatment of it. That's a movie I'd like to see, actually. You know, you get a good writer, director. Like I said, I don't want to see one of those sort of rom-coms where, you know, you're just throwing in different songs or whatever. I don't want to see that. I want to see this movie based on this treatment where you get some actors that can sing and can perform and play instruments and, you know, maybe perform songs from the vault per se or something like that. Or I don't know, but that's my personal idea. That's actually covered in one of the episodes. So definitely check that out. Like I said, I've got the links in the comments below. But that I enjoyed in the book, though, the first draft or treatment to Purple Rain. And then for me, after that, like I said, it kind of just jumps into like things like, boom, well, here's the parade era. Like, well, wait, you know, I want more. I want to go back to, you know, I want more. So, I don't know. That would have really given a lot of weight to the end of the book, you know, especially like maybe put that like at the very end somewhere, like, you know, that explanation. And like I said, those notes do exist. So I would love to maybe see something like that. Maybe if they do like an expanded edition or something at some point down the road. I do believe this book is selling well. I don't know the numbers on it right now, but I know it's been #1 on a lot of bestseller lists. And like I said, just within the fan community, like I said, there's a lot of us that got it upon release. Some got it like within the weeks after. And a lot of people are getting this as part of their Christmas gifts. So, like I said, again, those reading it for the first time, like I said, you know, this is a beautiful experience. Like I said, I'm reliving it every time I open it, but it's nothing like that very first experience of reading it. So, like I said, I envy you guys. But yes, this is something I definitely would recommend to definitely, I mean, the hardcore fans, that's a no-brainer. The casual fans, I would definitely recommend this book. To sort of the newbies and the uninformed or people that don't know a lot about, I would recommend this just on the strength of the introduction and those first 50 pages alone. Because I think the message that Prince wanted to put forth is something that I feel needs to be heard. Also, in the links to the show, I have episode 13, which covers that importance of that introduction, which is titled Freedom, Ownership, and the Definition of Funk. So those links, as well as the link to episode 11, that's there. So if you want to further explore this topic, check those 2 episodes out. But meanwhile, what do you think? You know, do you have the book already? Share some of your thoughts with us. Are you planning on buying it? Is this something that will give you the incentive to purchase it? Let me know. So let's leave a comment and let me know. And with that, we're going to end this segment of the Year in Review, and we're going to move on to the next segment of the Year in Review. And that one is going to cover the book written by Morris Day, which is On Time, A Princely Life in Funk. So about a few weeks prior to the release of Prince's The Beautiful Ones, Morris Day's book, On Time, A Princely Life in Funk, was released, and that was written by Morris Day with the help of David Ritz. And if you're not familiar with David Ritz's work, he has assisted some of the biggest and the best in R&B with their autobiographies. The one that I have that I highly recommend is Divided Soul, Life of Marvin Gaye. That is definitely a must-have in your collection. I don't have the one on Rick James, which was Glow, because I originally wanted Rick James, the original autobiography, which was Confessions of a Super Freak, that one. But I think the complaint was it was so raw and there were so many typos in the book that I guess, I don't know, maybe Rick's agent or whoever decided, now let's pair you with David Ritz and kind of clean it up a bit. So I think Confessions of a Super Freak has been replaced by the book Glow. But that being said, that's another one by David Ritz. There's also one he's written with Janet Jackson, Aretha Franklin. Oh, Ray Charles is another one. That's another must-have as well. So Morris Day chose to work with David Ritz on this book, and it's another winner to me. Again, this is a book that maybe not as, well, I'll put it this way, blown away for different reasons. And that's due to the fact that Morris Day's honesty and his openness has really carried this book. Again, we get certain anecdotes regarding Prince. We get more of an insight to their relationship, as and here's the thing, you get a lot of people in the community out there that's so pro Prince, that we forget that we're talking about a human being. Now, we're talking about a human being that's probably one of the premier creative geniuses of our time, but still a human being. And for a lot of us that have friends, that have family, there's a lot of complexities within those relationships. Sometimes you speak, sometimes you don't speak, sometimes you get along, sometimes you don't. There's some that you never have an argument ever, and then there's some, it's sun up to sundown and you're disagreeing about something here and there, and that's just a part of human life itself. So to me, the criticisms of when Morris is being open and honest about certain things, well, he has every reason to feel those certain things. That's his best friend. They grew up together. We're people that we buy the records and we enjoy the records and we're entertained. And that's sort of my thing. I'm into the body of work. When it gets to, so-and-so having a bad day or having a bad moment, or if so-and-so has to go to rehab, or if this happens to so-and-so, that's just a part of life. But, for me, it's about the body of work overall, first and foremost. And then when I read things like these biographies, it's good to get that information, but it's based on their choice for wanting to tell that information. So I get into it on that level, but it's not like it's affecting my life personally to where, oh, well, so-and-so said, I'm not going to buy that person's record, or I'm not going to listen to so-and-so because of whatever. But back to this book. Now, I haven't seen a lot of the fan community posting where they've received this book as a Christmas gift or anything, but I know a lot of people did get it initially upon release. Morris Day is still doing a lot of press promoting the book. So again, if you don't have the book yet, or if you just received it, or if you're kind of just starting to read it, there are going to be spoilers that will be discussed in this, and I do have a spoiler review that's also in the links as well. So once you finish, and if you want to get into it more beyond this episode, then there's definitely a reference point there as well. So with this one, like I said, I was really drawn into how open and honest he was about his life. He wasn't afraid to speak on his troubles, and it was definitely a great reflection. Just the part, even before meeting Prince, just how his home life was growing up, the things that led his family to Minneapolis, things about his mom, just how much of a hard worker she was, and just her work ethic and everything was, that was inspiring to read. Even meeting Prince, his point of view of what happened when he auditioned and joined Grand Central, which was the band that Prince and Andre Simone and Morris Day were in. This is sort of junior high into high school. Well, no, high school, actually. I know the band was started in junior high, but Morris didn't join until they were in high school. So that story, just how basically, Prince was calling out these tunes. I mean, like serious early funkadelic, Westbound era funkadelic tracks, and Morris holding his own on the drums. And that's the other thing, too. I'm glad that he is planting his flag into Prince history about how great of a drummer that he is. Just his, approach to studying drums, a lot of the people that he was influenced by. Of course, the big one we always get is Dave Garibaldi from Tower of Power. And rightfully so, if you have not heard Dave Garibaldi play, by all means, get your hands on the Tower of Power record and listen. Or go on YouTube. There's videos of him playing. Yeah, and all the Minneapolis musicians, even the non-drummers, so to speak, they all come up on some Dave Garibaldi. The James Brown drummers were also another influence on Morris. Different jazz fusion drummers. So, he's got those chops on that level. But unfortunately, we live in a world now to where, session drummers are few and far between. Maybe live work, you could still get something, but the studio for all genres of music, with probably the single exception of maybe country music, everything's computers. So, but if you're somebody that's into natural instruments, organic instruments, again, let's keep music alive in schools. Let's, keep the kids learning, real music by real musicians. Let's keep that philosophy going. Well, definitely, like I said, just reading Morris Day's, account of how much he loves the drums. And he's also a music fan as well. Now, I do listen to some Frank Zappa myself, but it was definitely an eye-opener that, probably no surprise that Prince would know about some Frank Zappa. But the fact that Morris Day practically wore the grooves out on Frank Zappa's Apostrophe album, yeah, I had to go and research that, and I got to have that in my vinyl collection at some point. But like I said, he's also a music fan. So they're not just caught up in one, he's not caught up in one genre either, so to speak. And like I said, a deeper insight and a deeper respect for his drumming skills. There is footage floating around YouTube and also too on Facebook page, his Facebook page, or Morris Day and the Times Facebook page, I should say, where you get to see him clown on some drums. Like I said, I'm more and more I'm impressed. And even when I go back and listen to the Time albums, which he played on about maybe 80 to 90% of drums on those albums. It's, phenomenal drum skills. And also too, like I said, the big debate, and I'm still trying to find this out, the released version of Irresistible Bitch, is that Morris Day on drums? Or is that Prince, being so aware that, because he can pretty much pick up on your style as well. So that's always been a debate. And I know there's probably a version, if it has not been released, there's probably a version in the vault somewhere where it is Morris cutting loose on the drum. So, like I said, that's a debate. So the experts out there, leave me a comment, help educate me on that one, because that's still a question that I want answered. Because some days I'm like, yeah, that's Morris, and then other days it's like, nah, it's probably Prince. But he does play, Morris does play live drums on Controversy and on Let's Work. So if you dig out your Controversy album, that's Morris Day on drums on those two tracks, definitely. So, like I said, just deeper respect for his ability as a musician. So it's kind of beyond being a front man for the band, a charismatic front man for the band on that. Like I said, other things, a great analysis of Prince as a friend, and also a great insight on Prince's motivations in certain areas as well. One of the interesting parts of the book is that you have Morris Day utilizing imaginary conversations, and they're based on actual conversations between him and Prince over the years. But in this case, as Morris Day is telling you the story, the writers are utilizing something, disguised as Prince's voice as his conscience. So that was pretty interesting. And I thought it would be, although I found it interesting, initially I thought it would be a distraction, but it doesn't. It does help move a lot of the narratives forward. And it kind of gives you the dynamic of, again, like I said, those that are just on Prince's side. You get that sort of insight as to, what was actually said if this was a real conversation taking place. So that was interesting, and found that moving along. And then there was a third voice, which represents the Morris Day image or the Morris Day myth, which he calls MD, which is sort of that, the character, so to speak. So those were interesting and very unique, a very unique way of telling a story and moving a narrative forward. So, and also helping to reveal a lot of the honesty in that. So I highly recommend this book. Again, if you don't have it, again, if you guys, some of the newer listeners, if you're just now wanting to find out just how deep the rabbit hole goes in the Prince world, this is a book that I would highly recommend you purchasing. And also, in regards to this book, there is a story in this book. I won't get into it in depth, but for those that have read the book already, what I want to know is, who is Wonder Woman? Obviously, the names were changed to protect the innocent on this one, but inquiring minds want to know. So, I don't know. Any theories? Then leave a comment there. One other area that I wanted to discuss about the book was the perspective of the demo tape. And the demo tape in question is the demo tape that landed Prince's contract with Warner Brothers. In the book, Morris Day feels that the demo tape that landed Prince the contract with Warner Brothers was actually a Grand Central recording that they passed off, or that was passed off as being Prince playing all the instruments. So my personal theory on that is that, yes, there is a Grand Central demo that exists, but I feel that it was still an all Prince demo that made it to the labels. Now, what I mean by that is that in sort of Prince history, Prince did try to go to New York on his own. He stayed with his sister for a while in New York and tried to get in contact with the record companies. Now, it's a possibility that that might be the tape with Grand Central that's on it. But the demo tape that was submitted once Prince signed with Owen Husney, I feel, is an all Prince demo with that. So, but that's just my personal theory on the whole controversy. It was shocking to hear that, and I could see where that was a sort of, kind of a tense point. We do know that when Prince did sort of go off on his own and secure the record deal, initially it did put a lot of Grand Central off because they thought that they were a unified effort. But Prince had other ideas. But again, that's kind of just what my personal take on how that situation played out, because it was kind of an eye-opener in the book for me, and I could see why they would feel that way, but at the end too, because also once Prince did secure that deal, he did have to prove to record executives that he was capable of producing his own album and that he could play all the instruments on it. So again, just my personal theory on what may have gone down. So don't take that as being written in stone or anything, but like I said, just my personal thought on it. But again, like I said, I highly recommend this book if you don't have it already. Like I said, again, if you're sort of new to the Prince side of things, like I said, this will be kind of supplemental material in addition to any music you may come across as well, and may lead you to seek out some items as well, or especially kind of get more into the proteges, because a lot of them are, or I wouldn't say proteges, but associated artists, because a lot of them are very good musicians in their own right. It wasn't always just Prince girlfriends, but in the case of the time, the family, Andre Simone, Jill Jones, those, Sheila E., those are definitely, musicians and singers and, really great artists in their own right as well, and definitely worth checking out as well. So again, what do you guys think? Were you able to get this book? Did you read it? Do you enjoy it? Leave a comment and let me know. And so with that, we're going to end off year in review, and we're going to move on to our next topic. And the next topic is Purple Reflections and Thanks. All right, so way back in the last week of August, I started this little podcast where I share my thoughts on the Prince musical Singularity. And here we are, the final days of 2019. And I'm telling you, ever since episode 1, I have had an absolute ball. Sometimes it is a challenge coming up with the topics every week, but somehow I managed to get something. There have been some submissions by listeners. Again, thanks. Keep them coming. And like I said, you too can also submit a topic or a question for the show. There's a link that takes you to my website to where you can fill out the form in order to submit a topic or a question. So I encourage you to definitely check that out, and I will definitely use your topic or try to answer your question on the show. So with that, like I said, the people that have been tuning in, the comments, you have my utmost thanks and gratitude. You guys help me keep this going every week. It's definitely a labor of love, and I am definitely going to keep it going. In fact, starting with next week's episode, we'll be back with the topics. In addition to the main topics, there will be, of course, not really doing the album spotlight so much. We'll be calling it something else, and that will kind of broaden the range. Like I said, we'll include more of the associated artists in segments as well. And we're also going to continue with the Bite the Boot segment. And for those of you just joining us, the Bite the Boot segment, it was influenced by Frank Zappa's Beat the Boots. And what that was, Frank Zappa, along with, say, Bob Dylan, maybe Jimi Hendrix, Grateful Dead, Prince is in that top 5 of most heavily bootlegged artists. And like I said, among that top 5 at one point was definitely Frank Zappa. And Frank Zappa, just like Prince, despised the bootleggers. So Frank Zappa's idea is a way to combat the bootlegging, because Frank Zappa owns his own, or he in his lifetime owned his own masters. Now his family owns those masters. Started this release called Beat the Boots. And what he would do is take a bootleg that's been widely circulated, probably the most popular amongst his catalog of bootleg material, and track lists for track list, and even a lot of times even down to the artwork itself. Frank Zappa would then officially release that under his own label, and therefore collecting the money that's due him, so the Beat the Boots. So my segment called Bite the Boots kind of takes that sort of idea and says, oh, well, let's, here's something that's been widely circulated. Hey, what if the estate put this out? Would that be a good idea? But I've had a wonderful time. Like I said, probably too many segments or too many topics to say pick out what my favorite moment was. No, I take that back. The top 2, both, let's see, one you can listen to on your favorite podcast platform. The other, you can only view on YouTube. And that is the Amari Purple Talk Emancipation Special. That was my absolute favorite out of all the episodes that I've done. Also, 2, the campaign for having the time in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There are 2 episodes highlighting that. One is an actual special for that. Be sure to look that up as well, because definitely I would like to see the time in the Hall of Fame. Definitely, if not 2021, we'll just keep going until they're in there. All 7 of the original members. There's categories to which any member thereafter is eligible for that. And like I said, too, it's not limited to just them. Whoever your favorite artist is that you feel should deserve a shot in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Amongst this year's, or for 2020, the nominations, I voted for Rufus and Shaka Khan. I voted for T-Rex, the Doobie Brothers, Notorious B.I.G. And I can't remember who my 5th one was. but I believe voting is still eligible. So if you go on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's website, you can see the list of eligible nominees for 2020, and definitely pick those out. But like I said, it was for me, Rufus and Shaka Khan, the Doobie Brothers, T-Rex, Notorious B.I.G., and I can't remember who the fifth one was. But like I said, hopefully if we can get their attention to take a look at the time and their significant contributions to 80s music. Now, I'm going to say this for all you that don't understand how the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame works, and for those that are going to just hold to the idea of, well, Prince did everything, so he's already in there, and why should they get it? They only had one hit. I'm going to stop you right there. First and foremost, go listen to both episodes of Amari Purple Talk, and mainly the Amari Purple Talk special, the campaign for the time being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Definitely check that out, because I do go over, number one, the history of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I break down the categories. And the time are eligible as performers, they're eligible as live musicians, as a band, and there are also categories for studio sessions and things of that nature. So by all means, check that out. And like I said, those categories apply to anybody that you feel should belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as well. So definitely check those out. But those have been my two favorites. Campaigning for the time, going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The Emancipation special. That one's a YouTube only. I'm going to have to step up my video skills if I'm going to keep doing stuff like that. Definitely have to kind of step up my game on that for sure. So those are my favorite moments. My other favorite is definitely the episode 13, which there is a link for that, about freedom, ownership, and the definition of funk. And like I said, not necessarily just for everyone, I mean every individual as an inspiration, but also to, within our communities, we definitely need more of that ownership, that entrepreneurial spirit, more owners and things of that nature. Because things are changing, times are changing, and being responsible is one thing, and that's kind of a given, but you do have the freedom to pursue the lifestyle that you want, and to finance that. Like I said, if you work a part-time job, then your free time should be pursuing what your goal or your divine purpose should be. If you work a full-time, then that should be your financing for whatever it is that you want to pursue and how you're going to pursue it, whether it's acquisition of equipment, whether it's just trying to get startup capital for whatever it is that you want to do, that type of thing. Because in this day and age, it's no longer that, sort of those days of those Jimmy Stewart movies where you go in and you're going to retire and get the gold watch, and the systems aren't designed for that, and the average person changes jobs within 11 times roughly within a 5 to 10 year period. So that being said, once you figured out what it is that you want to do, and if you believe in it that strongly, it doesn't matter what other people think. If you know what your divine purpose is, then, like I said, you're working that full-time job, then don't get comfortable. Don't get complacent. Don't don't get so distracted from what it is that you want to do that you forget to plan ahead for it. So again, like I said, if you're doing that part-time thing, then your free time is spent, realizing your dream or your goal. Then if it's full-time, then your goal is financing that in addition to keeping your lights on, keeping food on the table. And like I said, being responsible is a given. You should already know that going in. But like I said, you have every right to enjoy the life that you're living. And you also have a right to whatever it is that you want to do, because what you love to do isn't necessarily work. And you have a right to do something that you love to do that brings you that reward. So by all means, that episode 13, was my favorite, because that was the message that I wanted to communicate, because I was inspired by Prince's original mission statement for that biography. So it's got me to try to step up my game a little bit, and it's added a little bit more fuel to the fire to say, okay, yeah, we got to get this going, and it's off to a really great start. So like I said, it's been definitely a lot of fun, and I look forward to, like I said, doing more of this, and also to more of your comments and topic ideas, questions. Also to continue to like and subscribe, especially if you're on YouTube. If you follow the show via YouTube, definitely hit that like button and subscribe button. I know I'm starting to sound like every other show out there, but those things are important to all of us, and it allows us to keep going and to continue to do the things that we do with that. And that's going to end this topic, because a lot of things here is kind of bleeding over into the next topic anyway. So we're going to end this topic and move on to our final topic, and that is called the future. So I've kind of leaked a few things in regards to the show, about what's coming up in future episodes, what I'd like to have done in 2020 in regards to that. Like I said, Amari Purple Talk will continue. I've got some definite ideas. Like I said, Bite the Boots will return. We're switching out the album spotlight, and we're doing something a little different, kind of a broader range. Like I said, covers the associated acts as well as Prince stuff too. But the main topics will still continue as always. The theme song, so far, if it ain't broke, thanks definitely for the comments, because I did put that together myself, folks. So that'll still continue unless I get an idea for something different. So like I said, Amari Purple Talk will be a little different. Like I said, we could just kind of doing this as we go along, almost 20 episodes in. Like to go a lot further with it, and that's that. Now, as far as what's going on in the Prince musical Singularity, kind of some basic things that I would like to see for 2020. Well, as you saw in one of my Facebook posts, my wife got me a Parade Era t-shirt, and I am taking that as a cosmic sign from the universe that a Parade Deluxe or Super Deluxe edition is going to be the next big official deluxe edition sometime by 2020, maybe around Christmas, same time next year. So that's going to be my big prediction for 2020. Now, I might be wrong, because I'm just a guy here. I don't have the estate on speed dial or anything. They have no clue as to who I am, and I have no deep industry connections to fall back on, but I'm just kind of going with my own gut on this one. And I think that the Parade Super Deluxe will be the next big, huge thing for 2020. As far as personal hopes for releases, Crystal Ball has been on the brain for a while. I did an episode about what would Sony, what the next set of reissues be for Sony to release throughout the year. Because it looks like, based on what we've seen in 2019, with the exception of the Ultimate Rave set, which basically was almost 3 CDs in itself anyway. Well, 2 CDs and 1 DVD. So that was sort of a trio in itself. But, we had at the beginning of 2019, we've had Musicology, Planet Earth, and 3121. Later on, down the stretch, we got the Versace Experience, which I think is a quick buffer because we can't get the Gold Experience yet. More on that another day. But the Versace Experience, Emancipation, and Chaos and Disorder. So my guess would be, let's see, what was around that? Well, let's see. Crystal Ball, The Truth, and let's see, kind of looking at what's on the shelf here. Crystal Ball, let's see, The Truth. I'm kind of stumped. So whatever was in that trio of releases around that time. Other than that, I would say probably maybe Lotus Flower, 2010, and whatever was around that trio of releases too. So my guessing is that those will definitely see next year as well. I would like to see that myself. So that's kind of what my expectations for 2020 would be, just to see what Sony puts out next. Now, it would be nice to have official CD releases of, say, like Chocolate Invasion, Slaughterhouse, C-Note, those type of things. Those would be nice to have. Let's see, also to One Night Alone live, or the actual studio CD also. That would be good to have. And with the One Night Alone, bundle that with why am I drawing a blank on all this stuff tonight? What is the one? Live in Las Vegas. It was right around that same period. A real short video. It wasn't like the complete tour of that. But that DVD. Add that DVD to that set as well. That one I would like to see. But definitely, I've got a feeling Parade will be the next Super Deluxe edition. I did a poll, was it last episode or episode prior, where I did Parade and Around the World in a Day as being the next. And based on a lot of the response, which stemmed from a previous poll which pitted Parade versus Sign of the Times, a lot of people threw in Around the World in a Day. So the next week, I had Parade versus Around the World in a Day. And a lot of the topics from a lot of the listeners on Facebook, really sold me on the idea of an Around the World in a Day Super Deluxe edition, to where, again, I would not be upset if that would be the next release. And that's based on, like I said, the strength of the material that was recorded around that time. Because that was kind of near the end of the Purple Rain recording sessions, and then through the remainder of 1984 into 1985. So there's a lot of great material. There's material that actually ended up being on the Family album. So you would have a lot of sort of Prince vocals from that project that you can include in there. The B-sides, those were some of my probably favorite B-sides. Definitely She's Always in My Hair, both, single and extended versions. Definitely would, so yeah, there's a lot of material to where, yeah, my gut is going with Parade, but I would not be upset if Around the World in a Day would be the next one. So those are my expectations for 2020 as to what to expect. I would love to see some of the DVDs that have been, or they weren't DVDs back then, but DVD releases of a lot of video material that's no longer in circulation. But that's another topic for another episode on that one, so I don't want to get too in depth with that. But yeah, there's a lot that I'm looking forward to for 2020. So it'll be interesting to see how this unfolds. And basically, of course, as always, you'll get my reactions to it. But I'm predicting the same level of excitement that I got with the 1999 Super Deluxe Edition. I'm going to predict that the majority of deluxe reissues, who knows, maybe there'll be an original compilation of vault material. That's a thought. So I'm looking forward to those type of surprises. So in addition to that, I feel like especially if they release official CDs of, like I said, Chocolate Invasion, Slaughterhouse, like I said, official or a re-release of Crystal Ball, an official release or re-release of The Truth, that my level of excitement would be more so. Where this year, like I said, things like Planet Earth, that was something that wasn't in my collection. But, it was nice to have it back in. It's not one of my favorite Prince albums, but it was nice to kind of have it back into the collection, as far as filling the gaps. Things like, Musicology 3121 I've already had. Emancipation I've already had. So with that, and then two, we're not getting the gold experience and probably won't get that for a while. So my level of excitement was sort of high-low based on what the releases were. And the level of excitement didn't pick up until originals. That was a high point for me. Definitely the 1999 Super Deluxe. But I predict that with a lot of the reissues for this year, my level of excitement, even for those, because some things, I've had downloads of the Slaughterhouse and Chocolate Invasion because I was an MPG Music Club member. So it would be nice to have, and this is what I would like to see with that. If they do something like that, include a nice set of liner notes with it. Maybe some little context about the history of the NPG Music Club, and of course the who played what. If Larry Graham played bass on one track or the NPG on another track. Definitely, yeah, I would like to have like really nice package CDs on that as well. So I'm looking forward to what 2020 brings. But I guess what's most important is, what are you excited about? What albums would you like to see reissued as far as the stuff that Sony owns? What do you think would be the next Warner Brothers Super Deluxe Edition release while they still have the masters? Because we're coming into 2020, which means they're only going to have the classic material up until 2021. They've got one more year to go. And they'll turn all that stuff over to Sony with the exception of Purple Rain, Parade, Batman, and Graffiti Bridge. So, what would you like to see Warner Brothers release as the next big super deluxe edition while they still have that stuff in their possession? So leave a comment and let me know what's going on. So that is going to end the final episode of Amari Purple Talk for 2019. And again, you have my gratitude, you have my thanks. This is a lot of fun, and wait till next week, folks. So be sure to tune in, same time, same favorite podcast platform. And as always, keep it purple and on the one. Happy New Year, folks. Peace.